On a fog-drenched winter night in 1976, three young nuns vanished without a trace from a quiet convent in Willow's Bend. For decades, the town whispered of spirits, scandal, and silent rebellion. But when a hidden confession from six respected men surfaced, everything changed. What dark pact did they make? And what really happened to the sisters of St. Celestine that night? The crumbling walls of St. Celestine Convent cast long shadows across the overgrown courtyard as Marcus Wells carefully removed a loose stone from the chapel's east wall. Years of historical restoration work had taught him to expect the occasional hidden niche, but nothing prepared him for what lay within this one. His gloved fingers trembled as they closed around a leather-bound journal, its pages yellowed and brittle with age. Rain pattered against the stained glass windows, casting prism-like shadows across the dusty chapel floor as Marcus opened the journal to its first page. His breath caught in his throat. December 15th, 1976, he read aloud, voice barely a whisper. We, the undersigned, confess our role in the disappearance of Sisters Abigail, Bernadette, and Clarice. 6 signatures followed, names belonging to men once respected throughout Willow's Bend. A flash of lightning illuminated the chapel, and in that brilliant moment, Marcus could almost see them. 3 young nuns hurrying through fog-shrouded grounds, habit veils billowing behind them, their footsteps echoing against ancient stone. In his mind's eye, he witnessed their final moments, a muffled cry, a piercing scream that cut through the December chill, then silence, absolute silence. The journal slipped from Marcus's fingers, hitting the floor with a dull thud. His hands shook as he fumbled for his phone, dialing a number he'd memorized months ago when he'd first begun researching the convent's dark history. "Detective Logan?" he managed, voice cracking. "I found something about those missing nuns. There were 6 men involved, and they've confessed to everything." Catherine Kate Logan stood at the entrance of the Willow's Bend Historical Society, rain dripping from her umbrella onto the worn welcome mat. At 42, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd spent 2 decades solving other people's mysteries. Her grandmother's stories about St. Celestine's and the missing nuns had been the soundtrack of her childhood, whispered across kitchen tables and during stormy nights when the electricity failed. If you enjoy fictional mysteries like this one, hit subscribe and comment where you're watching from. The Historical Society was housed in a converted Victorian home, its hardwood floors creaking beneath Kate's boots as she made her way toward the research room. Marcus Wells stood at a large table, the mysterious journal open before him, surrounded by archival boxes and yellowed newspaper clippings. "Detective Logan," he said, extending his hand, "thank you for coming so quickly." Kate surveyed the room, noting the organized chaos of Marcus's research materials. "My grandmother attended St. Celestine's," she said, removing her rain-speckled jacket. "She never stopped talking about the nuns who vanished, said it haunted this town for decades." "With good reason," Marcus replied, gesturing toward the journal. "This changes everything we thought we knew about that night." Kate donned a pair of archival gloves before carefully turning the journal's fragile pages. The confession was written in a shaky hand, as if the writer had been overcome with emotion or fear. 6 signatures appeared at the bottom: Arthur Reed, Bernard Fletcher, Donovan Wright, Franklin Tate, Gregory Walsh, and Hector Simmons. "I recognize these names," Kate said, brow furrowing. "These men were pillars of the community back then." Marcus nodded. Arthur was the town doctor. Bernard served as deputy sheriff. He was actually part of the original investigation into the disappearances. Donovan managed the local bank. Franklin was principal at Willow's Bend Elementary. Gregory owned half the farmland in the county, and Hector ran the construction company that built most of Main Street. "Men with power," Kate observed. "Men with influence." "Men with something to hide," Marcus added quietly. Kate studied the confession more closely. The handwriting changes between paragraphs. They each wrote their own portions. I noticed that too, almost like they didn't trust one another to tell the whole truth. Kate glanced at the clock on the wall. I need to understand the context better. What was happening at St. Celestine's in 1976? Marcus pulled out a folder. It was a time of significant change in the Catholic Church. Vatican II reforms were causing tension, especially in traditional communities like Willow's Bend. The three nuns who disappeared, Sisters Abigail, Bernadette, and Clarice, they were young, progressive. They embraced the reforms while many in town, including the older clergy, resisted them. My grandmother mentioned that, Kate said. She always described them as ahead of their time. There's someone you should talk to, Marcus suggested, Father Michael Doherty. He's 92 now, living at St. Agnes Retirement Home. He's the last surviving clergy member from that era. Father Michael's gnarled hands rested on the arms of his wheelchair as he gazed out the retirement home window. Despite his age, his eyes remained sharp, alert, missing nothing. "The nuns," he said, voice carrying the slight tremor of advanced age. "I've been waiting decades for someone to ask the right questions about them." Kate sat across from him, notebook open. "What can you tell me about Sisters Abigail, Bernadette, and Clarice?" A smile flickered across the priest's weathered face. Sister Abigail was a firecracker. Before taking her vows, she'd been involved in civil rights protests. Even after joining the convent, she questioned authority, respectfully but persistently. Mother Superior Regina found her challenging. And Sister Bernadette? The gentlest soul you'd ever meet. She worked with troubled youth at the orphanage attached to the convent. Those children adored her. She had a gift for healing wounded hearts. Sister Clarice? Father Michael's expression grew more somber. Brilliant mind. She managed the convent's accounts, documented everything meticulously, had a memory like a steel trap. Nothing escaped her notice. He paused, looking directly at Kate. That might have been what sealed their fate. Kate leaned forward. What do you mean? 3 young nuns, each gifted in her own way. Abigail saw injustice and confronted it. Bernadette witnessed suffering and documented it. Clarice noticed discrepancies and recorded them. His voice dropped to a near whisper. Together, they were dangerous to certain people. These 6 men in the confession? Father Michael nodded slowly. I've suspected for years, but without proof. He trailed off, then rallied. The town council won't want you digging this up, neither will the diocese. Some wounds, they believe, are better left to scar over. Kate closed her notebook decisively. With all due respect, Father, I disagree. True healing can't begin until the truth is known. Then God be with you, Detective, he said, making the sign of the cross. You'll need his guidance for what lies ahead. The morning of December 12, 1976, dawned cold and clear at St. Celestine Convent. Sister Abigail rose before the others, as was her custom, to tend the small garden that provided herbs for the convent's kitchen. Though winter had withered most plants, the sheltered herb garden still yielded rosemary and thyme under her careful tending. At 28, Sister Abigail was the oldest of the 3 young nuns who had formed an unexpected friendship within the convent's austere walls. With auburn hair hidden beneath her modified habit, shorter than tradition dictated but still maintaining the dignity of her vocation, she moved with purpose through her morning tasks. The sound of the chapel bell called her to morning prayers, where she joined 20 other nuns in the rhythmic chanting that had marked the hours at St. Celestine's for over a century. Among them were Sisters Bernadette and Clarice, their faces composed in prayer even as their minds worked on matters beyond spiritual contemplation. Sister Bernadette, 26 and naturally maternal, hurried from prayers to the orphanage wing where 12 children aged 5 to 14 awaited breakfast. Her soft brown eyes noticed everything, a bruise on young Thomas's arm that hadn't been there yesterday, the way little Margaret flinched when adult voices raised above a whisper. "Sister," Thomas whispered as she poured his milk. "Doctor." "Reed came to see Bobby last night. Bobby's crying won't stop now." Sister Bernadette's hand trembled slightly, spilling a few drops of milk. "Thank you for telling me, Thomas. I'll check on him right away." Across the convent in the administrative office, Sister Clarice, just 24 and considered a mathematical prodigy before taking her vows, frowned at the ledger before her. The delicate fingers that now traced donation records had once been destined for a university mathematics department before her calling to religious life had redirected her path. "The numbers don't align," she murmured to herself, comparing the official donation records with the notes she'd kept separately. $3,000 from the Walsh estate, recorded as $1,000 in the official accounts, again. Mother Superior Regina appeared in the doorway, her imposing figure casting a shadow across Clarice's work. "Sister, you're needed in the chapel. The new hymnals have arrived and they need organization." "Yes, Mother Superior. I'll finish this accounting later." Regina's eyes narrowed slightly. "Your persistence with these financial reviews concerns me, Sister Clarice. Treasurer Donovan Wright has managed our accounts for 15 years without issue. Your progressive ideas about transparency are unnecessary." "With respect, Mother Superior, accuracy isn't progressive, it's essential." Later that afternoon, Sister Abigail stood near the garden shed, her voice low but intense, as she spoke with a man whose face was obscured by the building's shadow. "You can't keep ignoring this," she insisted. "Children are suffering. Money is missing. The bishop needs to know." "You have no idea what you're meddling with," the man replied, his tone a mixture of anger and fear. "Some things in this town are better left alone." "Nothing that harms the innocent should be left alone," Sister Abigail countered. "We've compiled our evidence. We're going to the bishop tomorrow." The man stepped forward, his face now visible, Gregory Walsh, his normally composed features contorted with rage. "You'll destroy everything we've built." "You mean everything you've stolen," Sister Abigail replied, turning to leave. As dusk fell, Sister Bernadette comforted a sobbing child in the orphanage dormitory. 7-year-old Bobby clung to her habit, his small body racked with uncontrollable tears. "It hurts," he whimpered. "Doctor, Reed said the medicine would help, but it hurts worse." "What medicine, Bobby?" Sister Bernadette asked gently, stroking his hair. "The special medicine. He says I'm not allowed to tell." Bobby's voice dropped to a terrified whisper. "He says bad boys who tell get sent away, where no one can find them." Sister Bernadette's blood ran cold. She gathered the child closer, her mind racing. "You're safe with me, Bobby. I won't let anyone send you away." As night descended on the convent, Sister Clarice hurriedly locked several ledgers and a small notebook in her desk drawer. Her hands shook slightly as she turned the key. Footsteps in the hallway made her jump, but it was only Sisters Abigail and Bernadette. "Did you secure the documents?" Abigail asked in a hushed tone. Clarice nodded. "Everything's here. The financial discrepancies, the withdrawal records, the medication logs for the orphanage." "I've documented the children's injuries," Bernadette added, her voice breaking. "It's worse than we thought. Dr. Reed has been—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "We leave for the bishop's residence at dawn," Abigail decided. "We can't trust anyone in town. Not the sheriff, not the bank, not even Mother Superior. Too many connections to these men." The three nuns clasped hands in silent prayer, their resolve hardening against the gathering storm. That night, a dense fog rolled over Willow's Bend, shrouding the convent in an ethereal mist. The chapel bell tolled for midnight prayers, its sound muffled by the thick air. Sister Clarice rose from her narrow bed, slipped on her shoes, and made her way to the chapel where she was scheduled for midnight vigil. She never returned to her room. When Sisters Abigail and Bernadette realized Clarice was missing, They searched the convent grounds, their lanterns casting weak halos in the impenetrable fog. Their calls went unanswered as they approached the chapel, finding its heavy wooden door ajar. Inside, prayer books lay scattered across the stone floor. Sister Clarice's rosary beads were broken, the wooden beads rolling in different directions as if violently torn apart. And there, on the altar cloth, a smear of crimson. What happened next remains conjecture. By dawn, all 3 nuns had vanished. The convent caretaker discovered the chapel in disarray, 3 sets of footprints leading from the building toward the woods, disappearing where the stone path ended and soft earth began. The initial investigation, led by Sheriff Dawson with Deputy Bernard Fletcher assisting, yielded little. No bodies were found. No witnesses came forward. The official report concluded that the nuns had likely fled the convent for unknown reasons, perhaps overwhelmed by their vows or lured away by secular temptations. But Willow's Bend knew better. In hushed conversations at Rose's Diner and whispered exchanges at Sunday services, darker theories emerged. Some spoke of supernatural forces, of ancient burial grounds beneath the convent that had reclaimed the pious women. Others hinted at more earthly evils, powerful men protecting their interests, secrets worth killing for. What do you think happened to the nuns? Share your theories below. Kate's rental car crawled down Main Street, wipers fighting a losing battle against the persistent rain. Willow's Bend had changed little in the decades since the nuns' disappearance. The same storefronts, the same church spires punctuating the skyline, the same wary glances from locals when an outsider asked too many questions. She parked outside Rose's Diner, a local institution whose faded sign promised home cooking since 1952. Inside, the lunch crowd had thinned, leaving only a few elderly patrons nursing coffee cups and decades-old memories. "I'm looking for anyone who might remember the disappearance of the nuns from St. Celestine's," Kate announced to the diner at large. It would have been December 1976. Silence fell. An elderly woman in the corner booth slowly raised her hand. "Rose Fletcher," she introduced herself as Kate approached. "I owned this place back then. Still do, though my daughter runs it now." She gestured to the chair opposite her. "You're stirring up ghosts, you know." "I found their confession," Kate said simply. Rose's coffee cup clattered against its saucer. "Whose confession?" "Arthur Reed, Bernard Fletcher, Donovan Wright, Franklin Tate, Gregory Walsh, Hector Simmons." The color drained from Rose's face. "Bernard was my husband's cousin," she whispered. "He died 20 years ago, heart attack, same year as Arthur and Donovan, all within months of each other." Kate leaned forward. "Tell me what you remember about the night the nuns disappeared." Rose's gaze drifted to the rain-streaked window. It was the fog that folks remembered most, thick as soup. Couldn't see your hand in front of your face. "My late husband walked home from here that night. Said he heard screaming coming from the direction of the convent, but the fog played tricks with sound. Could have been anywhere." "What about the 6 men? Did they have connections to the convent?" Rose's laugh was brittle. "Connections? Honey, they ran this town. Arthur was the only doctor for miles. Bernard was deputy sheriff, investigating his own crimes, if your confession is to be believed. Donovan controlled the money. Franklin shaped young minds. Gregory owned the land, and Hector built everything." She shook her head. "They were at the center of a web that trapped this whole town. Were they all friends? They presented themselves as pillars of the community, upstanding citizens. But there was something off. They'd meet at the Elks Lodge every Thursday night, called themselves the Guardians of Tradition. Very hush-hush." Kate made notes. "And their relationship with the convent?" "Arthur provided medical care to the nuns and orphans. Donovan managed church finances. Gregory donated generously, or claimed to. Hector handled building maintenance. Franklin helped place older orphans in schools or jobs. Bernard She hesitated. Bernard kept things quiet when they needed to be. And after the disappearance, life went on. Too quickly, if you ask me. The convent closed within a year. The orphanage children were transferred to state facilities. The property was sold to Walsh Development Company, Gregory's business. They tried building luxury homes there, but construction kept hitting snags, accidents, equipment failures. Eventually, they abandoned the project. It's still sitting empty. Kate glanced at her watch. "Thank you, Rose. You've been very helpful." As she stood to leave, Rose caught her wrist with surprising strength. "Be careful. 3 of them are still alive. Bernard's brother Lloyd took over as sheriff after Dawson retired. Gregory's son is mayor. They won't want this story told." Back at the Historical Society, Kate and Marcus carefully analyzed the confession document. The leather journal lay open between them, its pages illuminated by the soft glow of desk lamps as afternoon faded into evening. Each man wrote his own portion, Kate observed, but they're cryptic, almost deliberately obscuring the details while still admitting involvement. Marcus nodded. Arthur writes about administering treatment that served a dual purpose. Donovan mentions financial adjustments for the greater good. They're confessing without explicitly stating their crimes. Bernard's section is the most direct, Kate noted. "I witnessed their final moments and did nothing to prevent it. God forgive me." But even he doesn't say exactly what happened. "They formed something called the Guardians of Tradition," Marcus said, referencing his research notes, "supposedly to preserve traditional values against the cultural changes of the 1970s and the reforms of Vatican II. Kate frowned. Traditional values like embezzlement and covering up crimes? According to newspaper archives, they were highly respected. They received a Community Service Award just months before the disappearance for their moral leadership. Kate's phone rang. "Detective Logan," she answered. "This is Administrator Jensen at Willow Creek Nursing Home," came a concerned voice. "You visited Bernard Fletcher today? He's become extremely agitated since your visit. Keeps saying he needs to talk to you immediately." "I'll be right there," Kate said, gathering her things. Bernard Fletcher had been handsome once. At 85, his frame had shrunk, shoulders hunched forward as if carrying an invisible weight, but his eyes remained alert in his gaunt face. "You found it," he said without preamble as Kate entered his room. The confession. Kate sat beside his bed. "Yes, I need you to tell me what happened that night, Bernard." "We never meant for them to die," he whispered, tears welling in his rheumy eyes. "It was supposed to be a warning, scare them into silence." "About what? What were they going to expose?" Bernard's gaze darted nervously to the door. "Arthur was experimenting on the orphans, testing drugs, treatments. Some didn't survive. Donovan diverted church donations to our personal accounts for years. Gregory used unpaid orphan labor on his farms, and Hector ... His voice broke. "Hector was the worst of us." "What did Hector do?" "The older orphan girls. He ... Bernard couldn't continue, his face contorted with shame. "And Franklin?" "What was his role?" "Falsified education records, made underperforming students disappear from the system, sent them to the orphanage where they became invisible." "And you?" "What did you do, Bernard?" His laugh was hollow. "I looked the other way, filed reports that vanished, redirected investigations. I was the shield that protected them all." He clutched Kate's hand suddenly. "The nuns discovered everything. They had evidence. Financial records, medical logs, statements from the children. They were going to the bishop the next morning." "So you killed them?" "We confronted them in the chapel. It got out of hand. Sister Abigail refused to surrender their evidence. There was a struggle. She fell, hit her head on the altar stone. When the others tried to run," his voice trailed off. "Where are they buried, Bernard?" His eyes widened in fear. "I can't tell you that. They'll kill me too." "Who?" "Gregory and Hector are old men now. Their sons, their grandsons. The legacy continues." Bernard's breathing became labored. Leave Willow's Bend. Forget what you found. Some secrets should stay buried. Like 3 innocent women? Kate stood. I can't do that, Bernard. I'll be back tomorrow with a formal statement for you to sign. That night, Bernard Fletcher died in his sleep. The official cause, heart failure. When Kate arrived the next morning, she found his room already cleared, his few possessions packed away. A nurse handed her a sealed envelope. He left this for you, she said. Inside was a single sheet of paper bearing 5 words. The truth stays buried with them. At Willow's Bend Cemetery, Kate walked among weathered headstones, searching for 3 names. She found them clustered together in the northeast corner. Arthur Reed died March 1998. Donovan Wright died April 1998. Franklin Tate died June 1998. All 3 within months, she murmured to Marcus, who'd accompanied her. And look at this, he said, pointing to an adjacent grave. Thomas Richards, local historian, died February 1998. Kate knelt for a closer look. What was he researching before his death? According to his obituary, Marcus said, consulting his tablet, he was writing a comprehensive history of Willow's Bend with special focus on St. Celestine's convent. Too much of a coincidence, Kate decided. The historian starts asking questions, then 3 of our suspects die in quick succession. Heart attacks, supposedly, Marcus added, just like Bernard. Kate stood, brushing dirt from her knees. We need to find Gregory and Hector before they meet with similar accidents. Gregory Walsh's estate sat on 20 acres of prime farmland outside town. At 79, he'd maintained his imposing physical presence, tall, broad-shouldered, with a full head of silver hair and cold blue eyes that assessed Kate with naked hostility. I don't speak to researchers or reporters, he said, blocking the doorway, especially about ancient history. Kate held up her badge. This isn't a social call, Mr. Walsh. I'm investigating new evidence in the disappearance of 3 nuns from St. Celestine's Convent in 1976. That case was closed decades ago, Gregory snapped. Sheriff Dawson determined they left voluntarily. Sheriff Dawson was mistaken or deliberately misled. Kate maintained eye contact. I have a confession document signed by you and 5 other men. Gregory's composure faltered momentarily before his politician's mask slid back into place. I have no idea what you're talking about. Some forged document doesn't change established facts. The established facts are that 3 women disappeared after discovering financial fraud, medical experimentation on orphans, and sexual abuse happening under the protection of Willow's Bend's most prominent citizens. Kate stepped closer. Your handwriting on the confession matches the donation records you submitted to the convent. Bernard Fletcher confirmed everything before his convenient heart attack last night. Gregory's face reddened. You're trespassing on private property. Leave now, or I'll call Sheriff Fletcher. Lloyd Fletcher? Bernard's nephew? I'm sure he'd be very interested in our conversation. Kate turned to leave, then paused. I understand you purchased the convent property after the disappearance, attempted to develop it, but encountered difficulties. Construction issues, nothing unusual. I've already filed for permits to conduct a ground-penetrating radar survey of the property. Just a formality, really. The county still owns the road access. Gregory's knuckles whitened as he gripped the doorframe. You're making a grave mistake, Detective. Some secrets are kept for the good of the community. No, Mr. Walsh. Secrets like yours destroy communities. They just do it slowly, from the inside out. If this story has kept you entertained, hit the like button and subscribe to our channel for more mysteries. Sunset Manor Retirement Community stood in stark contrast to the nursing home where Bernard had spent his final years. Lush gardens, elegant furnishings, and attentive staff catered to residents who could afford its steep monthly fees. Hector Simmons sat in a wheelchair on the veranda, a plaid blanket covering his legs despite the mild weather. At 82, his once powerful contractor's physique had withered, leaving behind a frail shell consumed by guilt. "I've been expecting you," he said as Kate approached, "ever since I heard about Bernard." Kate sat on the bench beside him. "Then you know why I'm here." Hector nodded, gazing out at the manicured grounds. "I've lived with it for nearly 50 years. Sometimes I think it would be a relief to finally tell someone." "I'm listening." The old man's eyes filled with tears. "We thought we were protecting traditional values. That's how it started, keeping the town pure, preserving the old ways against the changes of the 60s and 70s. But power corrupts. We became the very evil we claimed to fight." "What happened to the nuns, Hector?" "They were going to expose everything, the financial fraud, the medical experiments, the abuse. They had evidence, irrefutable evidence, that would have destroyed us all." His voice quavered. "We confronted them in the chapel that night. Things got out of hand. Sister Abigail died first. An accident, truly. But once that line was crossed, you killed all 3 of them." Hector nodded, his shame palpable. "We buried them beneath the chapel altar. When the investigation threatened to uncover them, we sold the property to Gregory's company and poured a concrete foundation over the entire chapel floor." "And the confession? Why write it?" "Insurance," Hector explained. "We each knew too much about the others. The confession was our mutual destruction pact. If one of us talked, we all went down. Gregory kept it hidden at the convent, thinking no one would ever look there once construction abandoned the site." Kate made notes. "You realize I'll need an official statement." "I'm dying anyway," Hector said with grim resignation. "Cancer. 3 months, maybe less. I've got nothing left to lose by telling the truth. The others might disagree." Hector's laugh was bitter. "Gregory's been trying to silence me for weeks. 2 falls that weren't accidents. Food poisoning. The man hasn't changed in 50 years, still eliminating problems with calculated precision." "I'll arrange protection for you," Kate assured him. "Your testimony will be crucial." "There's something else you should know," Hector added, voice dropping. "The convent property. After we covered the chapel floor with concrete, Gregory had his construction company build a storage chamber beneath it. That's where you'll find not just the nuns, but all the evidence they collected. Financial records, medical logs, everything. He couldn't risk destroying it because it was our insurance against each other, but he made sure it was inaccessible." "How do we access it now?" "There's a maintenance tunnel that runs alongside the old chapel foundation. The entrance is disguised as a drainage pipe on the east side of the property." Hector reached into his pocket, extracting a tarnished key. "This opens the access panel. I kept it all these years just in case my conscience finally won out over my cowardice." The abandoned convent grounds were eerily silent as Kate, Marcus, and a team of forensic specialists approached the dilapidated chapel. Decades of neglect had reduced the once stately building to a skeleton of stone walls and collapsed roof timbers. Vegetation had reclaimed much of the property, vines crawling up walls and saplings pushing through cracked flagstones. Sheriff Lloyd Fletcher arrived with 2 deputies, his expression a mixture of resignation and concern. "The county judge approved your warrant," he said, handing Kate the document. "For what it's worth, I never knew what my uncle was involved in. I've spent my career trying to be a better lawman than he was." "Then help us uncover the truth," Kate said, accepting the warrant, no matter how painful. The drainage pipe Hector had described was nearly hidden behind decades of undergrowth. It took 3 officers to clear enough space for Kate to access it. The key turned with difficulty in the rusted lock, but eventually the false pipe front swung open, revealing a narrow tunnel barely wide enough for an adult to navigate on hands and knees. "Ground-penetrating radar confirms a void beneath the chapel foundation," the forensic technician reported. "Approximately 15 by 15 feet, 8 feet below the surface." Kate donned protective gear and a headlamp. "I'm going in." The tunnel smelled of damp earth and decay, its dirt walls supported by rotting timbers that groaned ominously as Kate crawled forward. After 20 claustrophobic feet, the passage opened into a small chamber with a concrete floor and walls lined with metal shelving. "I'm in," she reported through her radio. "There's evidence storage, dozens of boxes, ledgers, medical files." Her beam swept across the chamber, then froze on the far wall. 3 simple wooden coffins were stacked against it, each bearing a small brass plaque. Sister Abigail McKinnon, Sister Bernadette Holloway, Sister Clarice Winters. "I've found them," Kate whispered, her voice catching. "They're here." As the forensic team carefully extracted the coffins and evidence boxes from the hidden chamber, a crowd gathered at the perimeter of the police tape. News of the discovery had spread through Willows Bend with preternatural speed, drawing the curious, the concerned, and those with personal connections to the decades-old mystery. Among the onlookers stood Gregory Walsh, his face a mask of careful neutrality. When the first coffin emerged from the tunnel, carried solemnly by 4 officers, something in his expression changed. A flicker of fear quickly suppressed. Kate approached him. "It's over, Gregory. We found everything. The bodies, the financial records, Dr. Reed's medical logs, the statements from orphans. Hector has already given his full confession." Gregory's eyes darted toward the parking area, calculating escape routes. "You have nothing that will stand up in court? 50-year-old evidence? The testimony of a dying old man? My lawyers will tear this apart." "Perhaps," Kate acknowledged, "but Willows Bend will know the truth. Your neighbors, your grandchildren, your church, they'll all know what you did to those women, to those orphans." "You self-righteous bitch," Gregory hissed, his carefully cultivated veneer cracking. "You have no idea what it takes to maintain order, to protect traditions. Those nuns were destroying everything we'd built." "They were protecting children from monsters," Kate corrected. "And now, finally, they'll have justice." Gregory's hand moved toward his jacket pocket. Kate tensed, but before either could act, Sheriff Fletcher appeared behind Gregory, handcuffs ready. "Gregory Walsh, you're under arrest for the murders of Sisters Abigail McKinnon, Bernadette Holloway, and Clarice Winters." The sheriff's voice carried across the now silent crowd. "You have the right to remain silent." As Gregory was led away, Kate turned back to the excavation site. The forensic team had opened one of the evidence boxes, revealing ledgers meticulously maintained by Sister Clarice. The final entry, dated December 11, 1976, read, "Tonight we present our evidence to the bishop. The financial corruption and the children's suffering must end." If you're captivated by mysteries like this one, be sure to hit subscribe and leave us a comment below telling us where you're watching from. 1 week later, St. Celestine's grounds hosted a different kind of gathering. Hundreds of Willows Bend residents, joined by media and visitors from surrounding communities, assembled for a memorial service honoring the 3 nuns whose lives had been cut short nearly 50 years earlier. Father Michael, seated in his wheelchair at the front of the crowd, led prayers for the departed sisters. Former orphans, now elderly themselves, laid flowers on the simple markers that temporarily identified where each nun would be properly buried once forensic examination was complete. Gregory Walsh had not lived to face trial. Like Bernard before him, he had suffered a fatal heart attack while in custody, though in his case the county coroner confirmed that a self-administered poison had been the actual cause of death. Hector Simmons, under protective custody in a hospice facility, had signed a comprehensive confession detailing the crimes of the guardians of tradition against the orphans, the church, and ultimately the 3 young nuns who had threatened to expose them. Kate stood at the edge of the gathering, watching as the community began its long-delayed reckoning with the past. Marcus joined her, carrying a bound report. "The preliminary analysis of Sister Clarice's records," he explained, handing it to Kate. The financial fraud alone would have sent them all to prison. The medical records ... He shook his head, unable to continue. At least 17 orphans died from Arthur's experiments, Kate said quietly. Another dozen girls suffered abuse at the hands of men who were supposed to protect them, and the entire town was slowly poisoned by the culture of silence these 6 men created. What happens now? Marcus asked. Justice, finally. The surviving victims will receive compensation from the Walsh estate. The diocese has established a memorial fund in the sisters' names, and the property... Kate gestured toward the ruined convent. Will become a healing center for survivors of abuse. As the service concluded, Kate approached the 3 simple markers. She placed a white rose on each one, her voice barely a whisper, as she addressed the long-silenced women. Some voices may be silenced, but the truth always finds a way to be heard. Behind her, Father Michael's frail voice carried in the autumn breeze. Those brave women died as true servants of faith, protecting the most vulnerable among us. May their sacrifice remind us that true tradition is not about power or control, but about compassion, justice, and truth. Kate remained at the gravesites long after the crowd dispersed, watching as the setting sun cast long shadows across St. Celestine's grounds. In the golden light, she could almost see them, 3 young women in modified habits, walking with purpose toward a future they would never experience, their legacy of courage echoing through time. The mystery that had haunted Willow's Bend for nearly half a century had finally been resolved. The confession of 6 guilty men had, at last, brought justice for 3 innocent women who had valued truth above their own safety. Though their voices had been silenced that foggy December night, their story would now be told, a testament to the enduring power of truth against the darkness of secrecy and corruption. As Kate turned to leave, a gentle breeze stirred the flowers on the graves, almost like a benediction, or perhaps a final thank you from 3 souls finally at rest.